Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Friday, July 20th, 2018, and this is actually our 251st GoldFish Report today. Really, the 250th was a landmark. This is our weekly Country Roads with Winston Shrout, and thankfully we have Winston joining us. How are you, Winston?
Well, just getting older every day, but I still got a little bit of energy left, so we'll do the best we can.
I'm telling you, you're not kidding. It's expediting this aging process. Today we're going to be talking about, Winston's going to continue talking about and discussing what it means, a little bit of the history behind why we would want to reclaim our status, political status, and in doing so reclaim our assets. So it's important to understand how what our status is right now and how we can change it and how that would benefit us. So I'll hand it over to you, Winston.
Okay. Well, in the past I've spoken quite a bit. I referred to this one particular DVD that I had produced about reclaiming your status and assets. And then, I don't know, a couple of times ago, we had talked a little bit about the assignment of reversionary interest in collateral, that being the birth certificate. And so today I thought maybe we would go over another part of that particular DVD to give people an idea, what it is. I've talked a lot about it. I just haven't shown it. So I thought I'd show some of that today so that it might make a little bit of sense to people, why I'm so avid or almost rabid, as it were, about the process and the benefit it would have to people. For instance, I'm, hardly a day goes by. I shouldn't say a day, but, very often people send me an email complaining about, forced vaccination of children. Mm-hmm. And, most of it's coming out of California. Most emails I get are coming out of California. And so, the thing that I suggest, to people, for the benefit of the children or themselves or their elderly parents even, is this process. Because the reason why the government can force, as it were, people to receive medical attention, not just vaccinations, mm-hmm. but other things, mm-hmm. is because the government's claim is that they own your body. Now, people think, well, how can they claim something stupid like that? Well, they do it with their statutes. They do it with the things they've tricked you into. All these unconscionable adhesion contracts that people get into unwittingly. It's for the most part, it's without knowledge, and that's the reason why we can go back on it. Because again, when any kind of contract or anything like that that's done under fraud, even fraud by omission,
right?
You can't be held to a contract like that. And people again ask me, well, what about statute of limitations and all that? I said, no. The fraud starts when you discover it. When you discover there's fraud, you can act on it in that moment. And like I say, the main defense probably that people would have is a fraud by omission, because when you signed up for Social Security, or when you signed up for a driver's license or a marriage license or whatever kind of license you got yourself into, they didn't tell you what they were going to do with your signature.
That's right.
And so it's always a situation that is fraud by omission, and as we know, fraud vitiates all contracts. So all you have to do is go through and correct it. But today I wanted to go over a little bit of history, so that people would see how they've been treated Now, what happens is that, you know, when you grow up in the system or when you participate in the system, basically all your life, you don't know anything else. You don't know anything different. And so, the reason why we do these interviews and why I've created Solutions in Commerce was at the very least to inform people that there's something else. And it causes a lot of cognitive dissonance, for some people. Uh, and so, like I say, you kind of have to take some of this in small bites, small bites.
Mm.
And so I think over I don't know, about a year and a half that you and I have been putting these reports out, some of the bites are pretty big, but we're trying to kind of nip away at some of these things, that people are experiencing to get past the cognitive dissonance, that's caused because people have simply been raised in the system. Like for instance, if you were born in the United States and you had never traveled to a foreign country, you would not have the perspective. And so let's say, for instance, you took a trip into Mexico, you took a trip into Australia or Europe or any place. And then all of a sudden you're faced with a different culture, a different language, different food. The hotels are not the same, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, you have this little bit of conflict inside of you, So it's the same thing. We've been raised in one particular system here in the United States or in different places on the planet and so forth. And the consequence of that, having not experienced another condition,
Right.
many times it'll create cognitive dissonance. Now, in the United States and other places in the world, our generation of people have never known freedom. They've never experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when, somebody pops up and says, hey, you can be free, here's the way to do it, people say, oh, I just can't comprehend that. And so when I make suggestions or other people make suggestions about what you could do to obtain some measure of freedom, freedom causes so much cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. Right.
Pardon me for chuckling about it, but that's exactly what I've faced.
Right.
As an educator,
Mm-hmm.
if I suggest to somebody, well, yeah, you can be free. Here's some of the things you can do
Right.
to cause that. Then believe it or not, freedom causes cognitive dissonance.
Because it's a psyop. We're not truly free. They just like to make us think we are.
They
That's
think
why it causes the cognitive dissonance. Exactly.
exactly. So again, like I say, perhaps people need to take little small bites, so they can take bigger bites
Yeah.
and take great big bites.
Yeah.
And so but it takes a little bit. It
Right.
takes a little bit because there's a certain amount of fear factor. Well, they're going to come get me. They're going to throw me in prison. They're going to throw me in FEMA camps. All that kind of stuff. And like I say,
Yeah.
when I was a young person, our standard phrase to fear was, "Well, what are you going to do? Shave my head and send me to Vietnam?
Oh,
Is that the
right.
worst you can do?
Mm.
Pound me on the head or whatever." But what I'm saying
Mm.
is that there's several factors that have been put up
Mm-hmm.
as blocks so that people would not truly become free. And the main block is they've been told that they're free and they're not.
Right.
That's the big lie, like what Hitler was talking about. So anyway, as part of uh, uh, taking small bites here and small bites there and so forth and overcoming the cognitive dissonance, that's why I've spent so much time showing history so that people would understand how we've gotten into what we got. So I want to go back and just briefly review a few of the things we've talked about, perhaps introduce some new concepts to bring us up to
Mm-hmm.
yet another bite. And actually, this is a pretty good sized bite that I'm going to suggest. But anyway, without an understanding of history and how we got into what we're into, then, you know, it might help people to, you know, rather than just push something at people, you know, they would have some reasonable expectation that the information would be valuable to them. So again, we had gone back some time ago. Gosh, it's been almost a year. Almost a year. Wow, has it been that long? Yeah, almost a year. Where we had talked about that plan of the experts, and I wanted to just show. Well, let's see. Let me do the screen share here. Get my act put together. Is that up?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is part of
Sure.
a program we had put on, you know, some time ago where I went through the complete plan of the experts. But I just wanted to show it, this one diagram here, that all of these things that we got uh, in the world today, which we're working to overcome at this point, was actually a part of what we call the plan of the experts. Now you'll see that there's a certain structure. It all, I mean, I can't go back over all the history, but I just wanted to point out that such things here as the United Nations, Bank of International Settlements, World Bank, and all these other different organizations that were created was actually a part of a plan. Now, my position is, had the plan been operated properly, it would have worked. But unfortunately, the whole thing got hijacked. And so, in consequence of that hijacking, the plan failed. And actually, one of the main instigators of it, back in, I don't know, oh, I think around 1925, 30, or 40, somewhere in that period of time, uh, the main focal point of it, which is called M1. Let me put that back up again. This M1 here, which stands for Monetary One, which is a part of the program, who at that time was President Sukarno from Indonesia. He saw how things were happening, and he said, hey, this is not working. We need to just wipe it away and start it again, because it was being hijacked, principally by the CIA and those type people. The intelligence community, they were hijacking it. And so President Sukarno was wanting to just wipe it all away and start it again because of the corruption that had already come in. Now, a lot of people were getting to the point, you know, where we're getting back to what's called the global reset. And it is a reset. It's what Sukarno wanted to do. And so I don't think that the original plan of the expert will be readopted and readapted, because we have Nasara coming and Gesara coming, which are not part of the plan of the experts, but many of the provisions and points and so forth that could have been beneficial. Perhaps we've kind of gone past that point now. So anyway, with Nasara and Gesara and the global reset of the currency, the global reset, then I would expect that we'll kind of, you know, get some of this corruption taken care of. In the meantime, you know, people need to be educated, need to have an idea. So I wanted to give another little bit of history here.
In terms of the N1, let me just ask a question.
Yeah.
Sukarno obviously is no longer the M1, so whoever's in that position today, would they be still trying to, they're trying to, in other words, their position hasn't been eliminated, so
No,
they still have the power to do what they want to do. Is that what you're saying?
kind of.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, on the issue of Nasara,
Mm-hmm.
back, it's been, I don't know, maybe Anyway, M1,
Mhm.
the present M1,
Mhm.
who is alive and well, lives in Indonesia. And if you go back, it's been, gosh, I kind of lose track of days and months and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
But I think back before last Christmas, let's put it that way.
Mhm.
M1 instituted something very similar to Nasara, and he instituted that in Indonesia. If people want to go and see what he did in Indonesia, just do some Google search for Swiss/Indo, INDO, and then just put in maybe Indonesia or something like that, because uh, he had instituted some provisions, not all. It wasn't a full program, but
Right.
anyway, he started to institute in the country where he lives. So he kind of got a jump on it a little bit. Uh, and, when everybody saw that happen, and everybody was clapping their hands, say, "Oh boy, now the SARS is going to hit the planet," but it didn't
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't.
yet. It
Right.
didn't yet. Yeah. So if you just want to look at what M1 did there in Indonesia,
Mhm.
you can, study, what they did. Okay. Uh, Going again with a little bit of the history here. This is a short history on connection to the Philippines taxation. Now that diagram I showed you
Right.
with M1 and the United Nations. The United Nations was originally designated to be in Philippines. That's where it was supposed to be. And there are perhaps some reasons for that. Uh, so, yeah, I won't go into all that. But anyway, it didn't end up there. It ended up in said that's where the Rockefellers hijacked it.
Mhm.
The United Nations is supposed to be in the Philippines. Where did it end up?
Um, New York, of course. We're
On whose land?
New York.
Rockefeller.
Rockefeller. Well, I guess you would say Rockefellers.
So he hijacked the United Nations. Rockefeller's hijacked the United Nations and put it in New York City. But it was supposed to have been originally in the Philippines. So a lot of the history about the United Nations and the one world government that it represented
Right.
actually got hijacked. It's originally supposed to be in the Philippines. So this right here, what I'm fixing to show here, is just a little bit of history,
Okay.
so that people will have a little bit of understanding about that.
Well, even so far, it already makes more sense what you're saying. So, I mean, it's starting to help connect some dots. Makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, we're slowly taking little small bites and nibbling
Mhm.
away at it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think other people that would listen to this would
Mhm.
appreciate, some of those small bites and so forth.
Definitely. Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, this right here is just a short account. Anyway, the Philippine Islands was designated to be the seat of the one world government, and that's why they shipped all that gold down there into the Philippines. And it's still there. It's still there. That's a part of the collateral accounts, that we had spoken of from time to
Hmm.
time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in the early 1900s, the government was establishing, PI, Philippine Islands. They established the Department of Treasury, and they created the Department of Contract Settlement with the intent to settle all contracts with military type personnel.
Hmm.
See, I don't get into it too much, but
Hmm.
I spent 4 years in military service. I was never paid.
Hmm.
I was never paid. You get the word paid? Yeah, in lieu of payment, they gave me script called Federal Reserve notes,
Oh.
and so I should have got 40 acres and a mule just to be. Well, like I
Hey.
say, one of
Hey.
my ancestors had fought in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
He never got paid in money,
Hmm.
but he was given a land grant in Pennsylvania for his service.
Right. Land
You see what I
grants.
mean? Yeah. So he got paid.
Mm.
But after my 4 years of service in the military, technically I never got paid, and so this Department of Contract settlement was to deal with those kind of things. Of course, when I got out, I didn't have any better idea than anybody else about some of these things, so I never pursued any of that. But looking again here, citizens and all naturalized citizens are considered chattel property, and bonds are issued against them as a surety, which became the chattel property of the United States. So the alien property custodian, which is the Secretary of Treasury in Puerto Rico, we'll get into that in a minute. And then this is kind of complicated,
Right.
but it'll be more clear here. So anyway, in the 1920, they got rid of the Treasury Department in Washington. See, the Treasury Department was a cabinet position up till 1920, and then they broke it off, and then it was relocated to Puerto Rico with the Department of Contract Settlement, which was originally created in Philippines.
Oh, geez.
It's hard to find. It's like a jigsaw puzzle or something, trying to put all this together. Anyway, the reason for this is to keep themselves out of the jurisdiction. So in other words, these people that are trying to push this program that had been hijacked were trying to keep themselves out of the jurisdiction of the law.
Yeah.
Now I'm using the word law.
Right. Wow.
Now, this Secretary of the Treasury, now we had referred to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Treasury when we had talked about that assignment of reversionary interest a couple of times ago. Anyway, Secretary of Treasury is three things. He is the alien property custodian, the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America, and the head of the Department of Contract Settlement, which are war contracts.
Ooh. Settlement, yeah, you would think so. Settlement.
Anyway, in Philippines, this is trust fund number two. Trust fund number two is a special internal revenue trust fund that is now in Puerto Rico, which is trust fund number 62. Now, you remember we talked about those when we were talking about NASARA, those Farm Claims Act that finally got settled by the United States Supreme Court. Yeah, they identified the IRS as Puerto Rican Trust number 62, right in that. So they knew.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this head of this, whatever you want to call him, or her. Anyway, they handle both of these trust funds. Handles the Philippine Islands and the Puerto Rico, and they have two commissioners of the Internal Revenue. Okay, Internal Revenue. I didn't say Internal Revenue Service.
Right.
Internal Revenue. Because they had to deal. See, again, when they started moving all the gold into the Philippines, again, that eventually made up the collateral accounts, and they were using that as a surety to underwrite all the world's currency. So for the use of that gold, who would collect the tax on the use of that gold? Well,
the Internal Revenue, yeah.
The Bureau of the Internal Revenue would do that. And so they got two commissioners. They got one in the Philippines. They got one that's actually a part of Puerto Rico, and his office is in Washington, D.C. Because, again, Washington, D.C. is out of the jurisdiction of the United States of America. Now,
isn't that amazing? A lot of people don't realize that, too.
Anytime you're driving through Virginia and you drive up to Washington, D.C., they really ought to make you produce a passport because you're going into a foreign jurisdiction.
Well, that's part of the PSYOP, though. You see, they maintain that this is all, good, all part of one, all part of freedom, and, yeah.
Well,
until you get in trouble there, then you realize there's different rules.
Well, we got three cities, or had three city-states. It's kind of nebulous now, but it was Washington, D.C., City of London, and Vatican.
Right.
Now, I have been to Washington, D.C. I walked in without a passport. I
Mm-hmm.
have been to the city of London, and I walked in there without a passport. And other people have told me that they've been to Vatican City, but
Mm-hmm.
no passport. As far as I know, they didn't
Mm-hmm.
require a passport.
Okay.
So it's just an interesting anomaly that we
Sure.
have going on with that. But you can see what they did.
Well, because then people would ask questions about why it's so, and then they would they would know what's going on. So it's
Yeah,
part of the psyop to
it
keep,
is. It is. So I'm just trying to give a little bit
yeah.
of the history here
Mm-hmm.
to get people's brains unwound. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when I first started looking at this stuff, man, I was confused
Mm-hmm.
as you can be, trying to figure it all out.
Sure.
Eventually over time, the more I studied it, then the
Right.
more it became more clear what had happened
Right.
and what the structure and situation was. So I feel for anybody that's hearing this stuff for the first time. Trust me, I do. Anyway, it takes you a long time to get it all figured out. Anyway, what's happening is that all the tax returns are filed and sifted through the Philippines. It's technically revenue collected on liquor.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
We're all rum runners, huh?
yeah. If you go look on your master file, you're either a gun runner or a liquor uh, bootlegger or something like that.
Right.
All right.
Funny.
Anyway, the Bureau of Internal Revenue and the Commissioner of Internal Revenue in the Philippines is the one collecting all the revenues, or you can pronounce it another way, which would be revenues. Okay, just for fun,
Revenues.
keep that in your mind.
Okay.
You can either pronounce the word revenue like most people do, or you could pronounce it revenue, which might, if you say revenue, it might help you to understand just a little bit of this
Mhm.
crazy program they got on.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, the Secretary of Treasury, Puerto Rico, handles both jurisdictions. The Philippines and Puerto Rico are both territories
Mm-hmm.
of the United States. The Secretary of the Treasury in Puerto Rico is also the alien property custodian and the head of the Department of Contract Settlements. These are work contracts. And then the Department of Contract Settlements established after World War I and II. Now, what do you think that Title 50 of the United States Code is for? Title 50 is the Trading with the
The
Enemy
Enemy
Act.
Act, right, which made us all enemy combatants, and right. So exactly.
I got to say, these people must have been setting up nights, trying to figure this crap out. It,
So
it,
devious, so
to me,
diabolical. How
it's just so
diabolical is
stupid.
it, though, to have
Yeah,
hijacked
it's
humanity
diabolical.
this way? Yeah, they've hijacked the freedom of humanity and the quality of life, and there should be definitely some restitution.
Well, I'm just trying to convince people that they're not free.
Right, I know.
Get that out of your head, folks. Now, I'm going to suggest when we go on a little bit further here, how you might gain back
Right,
some of the freedom. We had talked about unalienable rights when we talked about the
right,
Declaration of Independence,
right. Hmm.
and so people generally have waived. You didn't give them up because you can't give them up; they're unalienable. But you have waived, WAIVED. You waived those rights
Mm.
to obtain a benefit privilege. That's
Privilege.
what that's what we've been tricked into.
A benefit privilege, not a
Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. It's a
yeah,
privilege to have a driver's license, not a right.
yeah.
Exactly.
It's a privilege to have a marriage license. It's a privilege to do
Privilege.
this. See
Ain't
now,
no privilege having a marriage license. Go ahead.
yeah, it is a privilege.
Um,
Now,
not. It's not, because then they have control over you.
no,
It's
it's
not
a
a right.
privilege. It's not right. It is a privilege.
Right. It's a privilege.
Anytime you hear the word benefit privilege,
Run.
well, not necessarily, but what I'm saying is it's a taxable event.
Mm.
You're being taxed on the privilege to do something because when you go make an application for a benefit privilege, what did it give you? A license. a license to be married, a license to drive a car, a license to open a business. The reason why, again, if you go back to your definition of what a license is,
Right.
it's permission from the state to
Right.
do something that's otherwise illegal, unlawful, or immoral.
Right.
So they got you coming and going on that one. But anytime a license involved, there's a license involved, just understand that anytime that you use that license, whatever comes from the use of that license is now a taxable event. That's where the IRS comes in. Taxable event.
Yeah, but they don't have the right to steal your assets.
Don't use the word right.
Right. But can they just come and steal your assets like they were trying to do to me
They're
in
not,
my divorce?
yours. They're not your assets.
Okay.
All those assets that were taken belong to who? The state. The ownership of all properties in the state. Now, when we get into this authentication process right here, you'll see the right thing.
Okay.
But anything that 99% of the people in the country or on the planet, anything they have obtained through their labor was done so under license. It's a taxable event. It's a benefit privilege.
Right, a taxable event, but not something that can be completely seized from you.
Yes, it can. It don't belong to you. It don't belong to you.
So the money that you're getting me so upset. Keep going.
Yeah, you're getting emotional about this, but remember when we had talked about trust. I gave you that one maxim, which is anytime that you're in possession of something that doesn't belong to you, a trust is set up and you're the trustee of that thing. So when the grantor of the trust comes to the trustee and says, pay that, give it over here, what does the trustee have to do? Give it up. So when you get in, I mean, there's several angles here that's going on. That's why we had spent so much time talking about trust. Anytime that you are in possession of something, a pen or whatever, anytime you're in possession of something that does not belong to you,
right,
then you're the trustee of that thing. This is not my pen. I'm the trustee of this pen. And if the government says, take that pen right there and jab yourself in the eye with it, I would be responsible to do that now, wouldn't I? Yeah. Well, not me personally, because I've done other things. I'm just trying to make it might sound a little bit silly, but back in my younger days, the government said, because we own your body, we're going to draft you into the military service, and they did.
Right.
And there was nothing I could do about it at that time. I mean, I could have been a conscientious objector, gone to Canada or some other thing. I don't know. But anyway, my point being, because as a young person, I did not know. I had to subject myself to the system because I had signed the SS5 form and I had taken a pen and I had waived all of the unalienable rights that were guaranteed in the Declaration of Independence. I waived them in favor of a benefit privilege. See? And so, after a number of years of considering these things and working on different programs and stuff, I can see clearly. And so, as an educator of solutions in commerce, I've tried to help other people to see clearly as well and to develop as much technology as we can develop so that people can be free, so that they can have their unalienable God-given rights, and how to overcome the waiver and the unconscionable adhesion contracts that people get into. And so, like I say, we're kind of an underground railroad. You remember back during the days of slavery, the abolitionists established underground railroads.
Right.
That's kind of what Solutions in Commerce is. We're kind of like
You're the Underground Railroad.
we're the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, there we go. Choo-choo.
Well, just back, I'm just,
It's cute.
yeah, we're trying to get people, to first off realize that they're not free. Stop all of that babbling about being free. I want to be free. I'm free. Give me a break. That's just simply not true. But you have to
Right.
realize that you're not free until you would decide to do something to become free.
Right.
So that's what Solutions in Commerce. A lot of it. I mean, it ain't just me.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of people, trying
Yeah.
to work on these processes and so forth. Anyway, let's get along here. It says, such was the case in the United States, as will be recalled. President Franklin D. Roosevelt made it mandatory for all U.S. citizens to turn their gold to the United States. Then Congress passed a law making it illegal for U.S. citizens to own gold.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Sadly, everybody just said, okay, here's my gold. That no one stopped to ask questions. And those who did, though, I mean, I have to say, it's not like it's anyone's fault, because those who did were,
it was the same way all over the world.
right, those who did were silenced or killed.
Right,
Like, for instance, Aaron
yeah.
Russo, right? Aaron Russo,
Yeah.
okay, the director, producer, film director, who tried to warn everybody when he made the movie America, Freedom to Fascism.
Yeah.
And he was interviewed, in the movie, talking about what was going on, and he knew that there was no law requiring us to pay income taxes to the IRS, and they took him out.
Well, it's not a law; it's a benefit privilege.
But he was making a documentary to try to, like what you were doing right now, to try to inform people what. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think. I think even though Aaron had recognized the problem, I don't think he knew of any solution.
No, I'm not saying he knew a solution. He was definitely just trying to wake people up to what he discovered. I don't think he had any solutions at all.
No,
it was just kind of, be aware of what's going on. And because he rubbed elbows with the ones in the Rockefellers, the ones who were hijacking it, they didn't like him talking about it. And of course, he somehow came down with some kind of cancer, which is something that happens.
Yeah, I know.
People who are whistleblowers, they all seem to get cancer, or just they all seem to commit suicide somehow.
Sometimes.
So yeah. Okay.
Anyway, let's get along with this. Yep. Said the gold was probably shipped to PI for safekeeping, and U.S. issued bonds in the multi-trillions to finance the U.S. government. This fostered the U.S. through its central bank to issue small change for these bonds, which we call Federal Reserve notes. Yeah. So this is just history. The actual bonds themselves were in denominations, 100 million, 500 million. They put them in those Wells Fargo boxes, put them in a mother box. And, and that got to be the biggest. I'm trying to think of a nice word to say about it. But, a guy actually, I was visiting with a fellow one time, and he said, well, I got some of that. He brought some of that stuff out. I said, get that away from me. Get that stuff away from me. I don't even be close to it. Because it meant too many people killed over it, Anyway, that's a long story, and I've got quite a few interesting stories about that, but I'll just leave that for another time.
Okay.
Because I'm getting contacted, every 2 or 3 or 4 months, maybe somebody called me up and say, hey, we got some of these Federal Reserve bonds over here. What can we do with them? I tell them, if you got some lighter fluid in the match.
There you go.
Yeah. Anyway, during this time, a Bureau of Internal Revenue was created. The word venue refers to a place, and the revenue means to change the place.
Okay.
See. So one way to look at this is consider that the gold, which is movable dirt, is the venue, and the revenue is the currency that's generated from the gold. Okay. So that's just one way to look at that word. It might be helpful to people to understand that just a little bit. Let me scoot over a little bit. I think I'm getting the sun. No, that's the
Yeah.
wrong one.
Yeah, no, the sun is a little bit, yeah, there you go. It's not a problem for us, but it's right in your eyes, so.
No, it kind of looks goofy. Let me get this a little bit further over here. Get this
Hmm.
thing.
There you go. There
Yeah,
you
there
go.
we go. Now I
So,
got it out of
it's
there.
always that time of morning.
Oh, there he is. A little bit further.
It's chasing you, Winston.
Sunshine likes me, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, then they created a debt servicer, which is Trust 62 in Puerto
Mhm.
Rico, which we
Okay.
call the Internal Revenue Service. All right, now
Hmm.
maybe I'll send this to you so people,
Yeah.
or they can send me and ask for it. This article here.
Well,
Anyway,
Winston, how can you not get emotional about it when this has been the cause of such, suffering and so much?
that's what I've been trying to impress on people. You have to remove yourself away from it. It's called loving detachment. Loving detachment.
It's hard
Because if,
when the family, when you know that you
I don't
know
care, but
people
if
who have.
you let yourself get emotionally hooked into it, they won.
No, I
You're
understand that.
not free.
I'm not saying that you should stay emotional about it, but I think initially the impact of this is it does hit you,
You
intellectually,
have the initial
emotionally,
impact, but you got to
of
get
course.
away from that.
Sure, not dwell on it, but sure. But it's just sad that humanity wasn't given the chance that it deserved because of the greed and psychopathy of these banksters.
Well, that might be true, but look, when people first hear about some of these things, they become angry. That's the first reaction. I've seen it time and time and time again. They
Yeah,
become angry.
and that's
Now,
right.
on an emotional scale
Yeah.
of vibrational frequency, where is anger?
Of course, it's all the way at the bottom.
So get out of it.
Yeah.
Be happy. Laugh about what happened. Because if you allow yourself to get hooked, you're going to stay in anger, you're going to stay in low vibration, and you're not going to ascend anywhere.
But
Stop all that.
but it's a motivational factor. It's a process. It's like a grief. It really is like a grieving process. We have to grieve the illusion that we lived. We thought it was the real life, and we have to realize it's a grieving process. And people have to go through those stages of grief, I think, or something similar to that. I
It
don't
could
think,
be, but
yeah.
you can't stay there. You can't.
No, 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 no.
I've seen people that
Yeah,
spent their whole life
yeah.
fighting.
Yeah.
It's just like that guy I was telling you about that took his guitar and sang "I Don't Remember Owing You" and got up on the desk of the IRS.
You love that, Winston. That was a
I,
good story.
I don't know if he ever got over it or not. I don't know if he ever did. Really.
Would
And
have
so
loved to see that. Just
uh,
the thought of it is actually quite reassuring. It's quite satisfying.
it's a real funny
It's
story.
funny. It's very funny. I agree.
Anyway, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this
Okay.
article here, but
Yeah.
anyway, there's an analysis here about the Constitution
Okay.
because as mentioned here, Philippines and Puerto Rico are territories.
Hmm.
Okay, so they're not under the jurisdiction because, like it says here, he makes the comparison to the territory under the Constitution and a territory. For instance, Puerto Rico and Philippine Islands are a territory, which are under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. See? And so, I mean, you have to kind of make a chart up on the wall or something and
Right.
get everything all put, to where you can actually figure out, what goes where, draw some arrows and stuff to it.
Right.
Anyway, then there's a lot more here. Like I say, I can perhaps send this article to you, and if people ask to it, they can send me an email and ask for it
Mhm.
if you want to try to get it all straightened out. All right, now, so that's a little bit of the history, that has caused the problems, the people, and we signed right into it under fraud by omission
Mhm.
by signing the Social Security SS5 form. See? And so I'm just trying to, point out, you know, how it is that we got into the mess that we find ourselves in. Because if you don't know where you came from, you got no idea where you're fixing to go to.
No, we need to know this. This is
Yeah.
very important, critical to understand how to get out of it and fix it. We have to know how we
Yeah.
got into it. Absolutely. Especially because we don't want to ever repeat it.
No, we don't want to repeat it. See, that's what Sukarno was pushing for way back in the. Then he finally got hooked up with Kennedy, you know, and they were trying to do some things.
Right.
Of course, he got Kennedy killed, and Sukarno was disavowed by his own country and all that kind of crap.
Right.
Again, but we're trying to move into. We're trying to see. This is one of the things, you know, that you heard me say on some of these other reports.
Right.
We have won the war.
Right.
But can we win the peace?
Mm.
Because in order to win the peace, what do we have to do? Make sure that we do not repeat what caused the war. And as I had mentioned, I'm absolutely not willing to just replace one tyranny with another tyranny.
Right, exactly.
I'm not willing to do that. And so if we got tyranny of the gold, see? And so it appears that there are some measures being taken to guarantee that we don't turn into backsliders.
Backsliders.
Backslider.
That's not one of those things you put in a bun and eat, is it? Slider?
No.
That's okay. What's a backslider?
Well, a backslider is somebody, in a religious sense, a backslider is somebody that had come to their senses, had repented of their sins, and got baptized and got saved, and then they started drinking again.
Oh, a backslider.
That's a backslider.
Okay. Or falling off the wagon. Okay.
Yeah. And so when we have the opportunity to repent and to be saved, you know, we don't want to be backsliders. In other words, we don't want to go back into what we just came out of.
Absolutely. Right.
I'm not going to accept just another tyranny to replace the old tyranny.
Exactly.
But how do we guarantee that doesn't happen? See?
Okay.
So what we've tried to do with education is to inform people, okay, here's what we had.
Yeah.
Now we got rid of it. Now we think we're going over here toward freedom. But again, freedom is a concept that is so foreign to people. They have no idea what it even feels like.
Freedom is, yeah, true. Exactly.
I mean, remember that old song, you know, Bobby McGee, you know, freedom is just another word for nothing left to do. You know, Bobby McGee didn't have it straightened out. But anyway, the concept of freedom will cause cognitive dissonance. So how do you overcome the cognitive dissonance so you don't reject freedom?
Oh.
You have to know about it.
Right.
You have to know about it. And certainly you have to understand the history that will lead up to the concept. You see what I mean?
Well, it also taught codependency, and that's a problem because it reinforced this. It helped to reinforce a behavior that didn't support self-sufficiency. Because if you want to be free, you have to be self-sufficient. You can't be relying on others to take care of you or do things for you. That you know, you have to be self-sufficient. More self-sufficient, more self-reliant, more self-responsible. So that helped to reinforce this, relying on the government for benefits or these privileges, as you said. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, see, you know, I'm one of the old guys. You know, I'm 70 years old. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here, to be perfectly honest. But I would, you know, everybody talks about leaving a legacy. At the very least, as my legacy, I would have liked to have left a few clues that people might utilize. Because when you die, you are free. But wouldn't it be kind of fun to experience a little bit of freedom before you die?
Yeah.
You remember that movie? I think it was Mel Gibson in that movie. What was it called? Where he was that Scotsman and oh,
I know what you're talking about. I don't know. I'm not
anyway,
big
you
on
remember
movies.
when they killed? You remember what he yelled as they were ripping his guts out?
No.
Freedom. He was free finally.
Mm.
He was dying. He was fixing to pass out of this world, and the last scream on his breath was freedom.
Yeah. I think people wait to die to get to be free. That's
Most
sadly.
people, most do,
Yeah.
but I think that with the natural evolution of the planet into a higher frequency and
Hmm.
dimension,
Right.
then we should be working at freeing the
Mhm.
people and freeing the planet. This
Exactly.
dirt right here is nothing but dirt out of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
If I can free up at least this little bit,
Hmm.
and you free up, and everybody frees up whatever dirt they have in control of, don't you think that Mother would appreciate that?
Absolutely.
And I think so. So again, we ought not to neglect the effort. We ought not to neglect the effort to
Hmm.
to free up Mother Earth. 200 pounds at a time in my case,
Hmm.
or however many pounds of dirt you're holding. Wouldn't it be nice to at least uh, free up that little bit, so that when I pass out of this world,
Hmm.
I'm leaving behind 200 pounds of free dirt. I mean, if you think about it in that sense,
Hmm.
what's been my accomplishment, for my 70 years here on this planet? Well, I freed up 200 pounds of dirt. How about that? See what I mean? And that's quite an accomplishment. It's quite an accomplishment to say that I have done that. And so, when I pass out of this existence and go someplace else, I'm going to leave behind a legacy of 200 pounds of free dirt. And I hope to do a little bit better than that. You see what I mean? That's kind of just, an idea, a concept, but wouldn't that be satisfying? Wouldn't that be satisfying on your deathbed, saying, "Hey, I got 5 minutes left here, and I'm proud of what I did.
Yeah.
My conscience is clear.
Right.
I can leave this planet with a clear conscience. I'm not dragging any karma out of here."
Right.
See? Now, when we start talking about ascension and doing all those kind of things,
Hmm.
that's the state of mind you have to get into. Like I say, I keep, there since 2012, everybody running around meditating and praying and doing all kinds of things, thinking they were ascending. They weren't. They're
Well,
not.
the problem with this whole ascension thing, Winston, that I find is that a lot of people are focusing on themselves more than service to others, which is
Mm-hmm.
really how yeah, which is how you, I guess, resolve that karma while you're here too. I mean, if all you're doing is working on meditating and working on yourself, not to say that you shouldn't, but it's that at some point has to lead you to the understanding that we're all one, so that you would naturally feel that connection to everyone else, and that, I guess, also that sense of oneness and that sense of collective um, collective existence, collective being.
What's that little slogan that Q guy is talking about? We all go, we want to go. How does
Oh,
he say that?
where we go one, we go all. Yeah, Q.
Exactly.
Right. That was on JFK's.
Exactly.
Right. That
Yeah.
was on the bell of JFK's yacht. Yeah, and that was why they use that, because there's a connection there, and there will be some more documents, by the way, since you mentioned that. But I'll mention
Uh-oh.
that as an announcement at the end.
Go ahead and announce it right now.
Well, there will be some more documents that will be released. on social media that we will publish, that we will talk about in future reports. So just to let our viewers know, but it is something that's already available on social media. So it's not like, you know,
Yeah, we're trying to
we're
get
just going to talk about it.
information out to as many people as possible.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on right now. I hope people are keeping up with all that because, like I say, you know, this is history in the making. We're making history, folks. You are. I am. We all are. All right. Well, in that connection, let's get along with some of the other thought process here. I wanted to, you know, in time, a lot of the interviews we've done in the past, I keep talking about this DVD that I created called Reclaiming Your Status and Assets. And, you know, and perhaps I didn't explain enough about it to inspire people to want to get that information and apply it. So a couple of times ago, we had talked about one portion
Right.
of that had to do with this very history we're talking about here, dealing with the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Treasury from Puerto Rico, from Philippines, from the one world government.
Yeah.
That's what we were doing. We were passing back the liability that we caused with the SS5 form. All right. Now, another part of that particular DVD had to do with liberating this dirt, this body right here. Because again, if you look in the U.S. statutes, they say that the ownership of all properties in the state. That's the feudal system, folks. That's the feudal system. Now, we had talked about, especially, see, again, when you don't know history, you draw false conclusions about the present. And that's why on that interview we did with the Declaration of Independence, you know, I'm sure some people were offended at me because I wasn't flag waving. I wasn't flag waving. I was giving the history and the details that caused Jefferson to write that document.
Okay. What? We just had a little blip in the connection. I'm not sure where it's at, but keep going. So it's back now.
I saw it. It's back now. It's okay. It's probably something old.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway, it did it again.
It's okay on this end, though. So far, it seems to keep going. It seems to be okay, though.
All right. I'll keep talking then if something happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
I'll let you know if something happens. It's okay.
Yeah. Again.
But you might have to repeat.
Yeah. When you start to talk about liberty, liberty and freedom are not the same thing. People need to study those words, so forth. And the concepts that go with them. But anyway, as I had mentioned, you know, without a knowledge of history, I mean, on the 4th of July, what if everybody, you know, had really thought about the circumstances that caused that to happen?
What happened here? Sorry. Go, keep going.
It's still recording. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's good. Now I just got a notification and it's very loud. Turn that down.
Yeah, that's okay. I can talk later than your notifications, maybe.
There we go. I'm just going to turn it down.
All right. Okay.
All right. We're good to go. Good.
All right. Well, again, you know, like I say, if everybody on the 4th of July, you know, had to listen to that interview instead of going out and eating hot dogs and shooting off firecrackers and stuff, you know, would we have had a different effect on the country? And the answer is yes, because people have been fed a lie. People have been fed a whole series of lies. And this fella, this Howard Zinn, he put out a real history, you know. Right. And so I'm just trying to bring those things into perspective so that people would, you know, at least stop to consider, you know, how things really are, and stop lying to ourselves. Stop lying to ourselves.
Well, this is the yellow brick road. I mean, this is, you know,
Yeah.
This is the illusion, the wizard, and the whole thing is the yellow brick road.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of unfortunate, that we've come to this, but look, we have to wake up. Like I say, we can't win the peace
Right.
by repeating the things that cause the problems. That's the definition of insanity.
Yep.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result.
And the Democrats are finding that out right now because all
Yeah.
these plans that they have aren't working any longer. And
Mm-mm.
all these nefarious things and all this hijacking and false flags, none of it works anymore. And that's by definition how you know they're psychopaths. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, they're insane.
Yep.
Now, so this portion here I want to go into in some detail. We have talked about the concept of authentication. The reason we want to authenticate something is so that it's given full faith and credit as a true, correct document. And then we're going to do something with it. We're going to do something with it, not just have it, stuck in our shelf someplace, but we're going to do something.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Let me just interject. It's not that I mean all Democrats. I meant the representatives that we're talking about. We're talking about the elected Democrats. Those are the ones I was referring to, not the people. So go ahead. Although there are some people who are a little crazy too, but sorry. But I had to clarify my comment. I'm sorry. I didn't want to go too far without clarifying that. But yes, so authentication gives full faith and credit, you're saying?
I'm going to a document. Now, the particular document that we want to give full faith and credit to, I'll show a picture of it here. In my case, oops, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let me get the screen share going here. Can you see that?
Yes, I do. That's a birth certificate, looks like.
No, it's not. It's a certificate of live birth. Look on the document right there. What does it say?
Okay, well, what's the difference for our viewers? Maybe you should mention, is there a way to, is there a difference between the two?
Well, look at my name. What's the name of the baby down here? Full name of child, Winston Shrout, spelled how?
Oh, right. So you have upper and lower case. So that that indicates a live
Real baby.
right, alive and measured in weights and like gold is. So you're logged as a gold measurement.
Yeah. Now,
worth your weight in gold. There you go.
Kind of. But okay. So you had asked me about you referred to this as a birth certificate. It's not.
Okay.
It's a certificate of live birth.
They don't all say that though, but okay.
I know. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
As it turned out, my situation was pristine for this particular procedure.
That's why
we've run into anomalies and we've dealt with them. But I want to go into those variations later. Yeah, so let's not talk about variation. Let's just talk about Winston here for a little while.
Oh wait, it does say that. I'm holding a birth certificate in my certificate of live birth in my hand right now. Two of them, and it does say certificate of live birth. Why we call them birth certificates, I don't know. Must be a bad habit.
Well, it's a bad habit.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this right here, this document right here, you can see right there, certificate of live birth.
Right.
This is very similar to a manufacturer's statement of origin for a new automobile.
Statement of origin. That's
okay.
Funny. It's funny. Yeah.
When you get our previous reports up, that's why I've told people when our previous reports go back to the very first country road to understand the original issue.
Yeah, original issue. That was in the very beginning, Winston. That's right.
This document right here is a manufacturer who my mother was a manufacturer. This is the manufacturer's statement of origin. Where did the baby come from? Well, there's a name right there. mother of child, Minnie Jane Golden. She was a manufacturer. And she manufactured this child. This, excuse me, this is a manufacturer statement of origin of original issue.
Right.
It had not, this entity right here had not existed until it came out of her womb.
Right.
And then as a live birth, then it was given a name. It was given the title. Now, so this right here, this document that we're looking at, is not a birth certificate, but it's a certified copy of the manufacturer's statement of origin. Where is that original at?
The original is with
They're not going to give it to you.
Yeah, the state has it, right.
Well, yeah. They're not going to. Like I say, I had a friend of mine. He traced one of his down to the county where the county still had it.
Yeah.
And they would let him look at the front, and then the circumstances happened. You know, the clerk, whatever, got called away, and he turned it over and looked down the back of it. It was a gold certificate. It had I think he said every ounce of his baby body was measured at $8. Dollars. Not United States notes, not Federal Reserve notes. Dollars. A dollar is what? It's a weight of gold. I forgot how many grams it is, but a dollar is a weight of measurement. It is not a weight measurement of money. And so on the back of his manufacturer statement of origin, it had listed that the value was $8 for every ounce, $8 in gold. Okay? So, you know, you got to get your mind wrapped around some of this stuff, folks. I mean, it's right in front of us. Anyway, so this particular document here, as was mentioned, you know, it has meets and bounds, or what we would call meets and bounds on property. It's describing the physical body. So it's got weight 7 pounds, 14 ounces.
Right.
I don't know. Did it have my eye color and all that kind of stuff? Maybe it did, maybe don't.
Sometimes hard to tell at birth, as they change.
Yeah, they change a little bit. All right. So that is the document for this process that we are keying in on.
Yep.
This is the document for this particular process that we're keying in on, and we'll talk about the variations later. As I had mentioned, in my particular situation, my situation was pristine for the process that we're doing. All right, so that's that. Now the question gets to be, okay, that came from the registrar of the state of Kentucky. It's a certified copy. It's not the original. It's a certified copy.
Certified copy.
So how do I get a certified copy to be an original?
Right. How do you get an original issue?
Yeah, that's what we're doing through this authentication process. Okay, somebody's got the original over here, but I can create another original through the authentication process. That's what we're doing.
Got it.
Now, the process is how you go about doing that. And so that's what I want to show. I want to show how to go about
Got it.
Creating an original.
You have a great way of explaining this, Winston. Oh, yeah, no, I'm not on mute, because it really helps people to understand what the problem is and what a solution is, which is why it's Solutions in Commerce.
Okay, here's how we do it.
Okay.
I went to the Secretary of State of the Commonwealth of Kentucky to get an authentication on the certified copy. That's what he did.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing we do is we take the certified copy of the original MSO, we take it to the Secretary of State in that particular state, and we ask for an authentication. So this Secretary of State authenticated that document that we just looked at. Any questions about that?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I wanted to just make a point that there is still more information about this that folks might want to know regarding what state or what country it should be authenticated for.
We're fixing to tell you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
if you look on this document right here, the justification. The justification to get an authentication rather than an apostille,
right,
is this for use in a non-Hague Convention country. If you say, excuse me, if you say that you're fixing to use this document in a Hague Convention country, there's only about 80 of them, I think. If you say you're going to use it in a Hague Convention country, they will not authenticate it, but they will try to do an apostille.
Got it. Okay.
So right. Taiwan's not a Hague Convention country. So I just told them, I'm going, this is for use in Taiwan. I said, okay, cool. We'll do the authentication then.
Okay.
All right. Now, whether I ever get to Taiwan or not, I may go there, but whether I go there or not, is immaterial. All right. So that came again from the Secretary of State of Kentucky, of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. This is not the state of Kentucky. This is the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Do you see the difference? Yes, no, maybe. The state
I was on mute. But it came back saying Commonwealth, but you didn't. Okay.
It is the Commonwealth. It's the original jurisdiction.
Oh, that's how you know it's an original issue.
Well, yeah, we're going on the private side with all this. The state of Kentucky is a corporation that's bankrupt. The Commonwealth of Kentucky is the original jurisdiction. It is not bankrupt. That's why we're going for full faith and credit.
Okay.
Full faith and credit, not limited liability. And so if it had been the state of Kentucky that had done this, it would be under limited liability, which we're trying to get away from. Okay, this takes a little bit.
I got it.
A little bit of a mind warp for people to get, but
okay.
I'm pointing out some very important concepts here. All right. Now that I've got it authenticated, from the Secretary of State of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, now what am I going to do? Okay, let's go to the next step here. Which is, I'm going to take it to, let's see, is this it? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to take it on over here to the United States of America original jurisdiction. This is not the United States. This is the United States of America. See how it's spelled? I'm going to go to the Secretary of State to get it authenticated. So if you look on here, it says, I certify that the document hereunto annexed is under the seal of the states of Kentucky, state of Kentucky, which is incorrectly put. But anyway, and such seal are entitled to full faith and credit. Then it's got an asterisk. For the contents of the annex document, the department assumes no responsibility. This certificate is not valid if it is removed or altered in any way whatsoever. Now, you look on down through here, in testimony whereof, in his capacity as the Secretary of State of the United States of America, John Kerry put his signature to it, blah, blah, blah. And so now what I have created is an original copy. In other words, an original document. There's more, there can be more than one original of anything. For instance, how many copies of the Constitution have you seen? They made several originals. Originals went to every stinking state.
Ah, exactly.
Yeah, they didn't just make one.
Mm-hmm.
There were a bunch of them, a bunch of originals, and each state got an original. Mm-hmm. That's how they were able to find the true 13th Amendment, because I forgot what state it was they found it in their archives and so forth, but it was there.
Right, right. Well, it wouldn't be skipped either. I mean, okay, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and so is it possible to have more than one original of my MSO? Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's one right here. Mm-hmm. Here it is.
Yeah.
Here is an original MSO for this hunk of dirt. I got it right here.
Okay.
All right. Now that I have the MSO,
manufactured
statement of origin,
statement of origin
body right here, what can I do with it? Well, basically, any damn thing I want to do with it. But by having this document in my possession, mm-hmm. could any fictional legal entity dictate what shall be done with this body?
No.
Can they force me to vaccinate myself?
No.
Can they force me to take pills or do whatever? No, they can't.
No, because you're not you're not a corporation. You're not beholden to them.
I got the SS5.
Yeah.
I got the MSO. For instance.
So you're proving you're a live human being. You're not a.
Well, yeah, I proved that, but
yeah. Okay, we're not done.
Yeah, like I say, one time we was having a little study class about some of these things years and years ago, probably about, 1999, 2000. One of the guys in our study group was a retired highway patrolman out of Arizona. Mm-hmm. And he told us that as a highway patrolman, if he ever stopped a vehicle and the driver could produce the manufacturer's statement of origin, they were to have nothing to do with them and send them on their way.
The manufacturer's statement of origin for the car.
Yeah. Now, could you do the same process for a car? Yes, you can. But let's not get into that.
Okay.
Let's stick to the people. Right? But what I'm trying to impress upon people is that the fictional entities cannot do anything with that. Mm-hmm. It's not in their jurisdiction. Who could do something to somebody that had this document? The sheriff.
Ooh. Sheriff, you said, is the most powerful person in the county, in the state, which is the county.
You're damn straight.
Yeah.
And Sheriff Mack is trying to get all them sheriffs educated so they act right.
Right.
So anyway, okay, but let's go along. All right, so now I got the document. I got it right here. I got the original. I have an original. All right, now what can I do with that original? That's the question. Mm-hmm. So the thing we would want to do with that original is we would want to let's see here. I'm going to have to go to photos again.
Because you're on the private side, because only the sheriff has jurisdiction over the private side. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me take this off and go to a typical affidavit of ownership. Now, in commerce, especially on the private side, how do you establish truth?
With an affidavit.
With an affidavit.
We just went over that in our last report, and I hope everyone and all the viewers, that was your quiz. That was a quiz question.
That was a quiz question.
Yep.
So right here is a typical affidavit of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's known as a counter deed. A
Mm.
counter deed supersedes all previous deeds. All right, so here is a typical. I'm just trying to see if I had a copy of my actual one. I think I do. Let's see if I can find that. It's
Hold on, I'm going to just.
I know where it's at. I know where it's at now.
Okay, okay. All right, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just pause it for a minute. Let me go find that.
Yeah, no, I go ahead.
Okay, I didn't have my actual one. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. Okay, here is a generic affidavit of ownership that you would record. Okay. Now, of course, all these generic things are on the DVD. I think they're in Microsoft Word. They're easy to use unless you're on Mac. But you can figure, if you have to, just retype the darn thing. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's mine. Okay. All right. Now, so you create the affidavit, and this is one of the things that we want to record. Now, some of the people are having problems recording things and stuff like that, so we'll go into that just in a moment. But in connection, well, let's just talk about recording right now. All right. A lot of people, excuse me. I got a little bit of cough early this morning. We okay? I can't hear you. Are you on
Sorry,
mute?
yeah, no, I'm on mute. I didn't want you to hear
Okay.
the ruckus.
All right. Now what we want to do to make the record. Now, people have asked me, is this necessary? And I answer no. But it is, in my estimation, a very good thing, because if you were to lose, your house caught on fire and the house burnt down, all your documents was there, could you go and retrieve those documents if they're recorded? Yes. And so it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. Now, in connection with that, I had created a UCC1 financing statement. I'm just trying to see if I actually have that up to look at. Maybe I don't. Let's see. But what we want to do is to create. Well, I don't have the way I filled it out. But what we're looking to do is to create a UCC1 financing statement, however you want to do it, either on national form or on state form. In my particular case, I was in a big hurry, so I did it on a national form. But what we're wanting to do is to create a UCC1 financing statement that we're going to record, if at all possible. It's not a lien, but it demonstrates that if the public wanted to try to attack what we've done over here, we have created an estoppel by utilizing revised Article 9 of the UCC which talks about perfecting a security interest in collateral. Should the question ever come up? Would it? I don't know. It might, but maybe it would not. Or maybe it would. And so to go an extra mile on this whole process, I suggested creating a UCC1 financing statement to demonstrate that we had perfected the security interest in collateral, along with revised Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code, which basically says to perfect, you have to have title and you have to have possession. If you can demonstrate that you have title and possession, what have you just done to the straw man trust? You just collapsed it. It's a goner. It's gone. And so that demonstration on the UCC1 financing statement that we would prefer to have recorded along with these other documents in the county recorder's office collapses the trust.
Collapses the trust.
You see the ramifications of what we're doing here, folks.
Right.
According
to their own rules in the UCC.
It's trust law.
Right.
It's trust law.
Right.
We just collapsed the straw man trust because we perfected the security interest. We got title and we got property. See, a trust is a bifurcation. You got the title over here with the trustee. You got the trust asset over here with the beneficiary. What we just did was put them together.
Right.
That collapses the trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why we spent so much time in the past in some of our interviews and stuff like that to talk about trust, trust law.
Right.
Because right now, every person in the United States is a trust that had been registered in Puerto Rico.
Straw man.
Straw man trust. Yeah. Your straw man was actually. And so if you want to go on to any kind of direct attack against some of the problems you're facing with right now, what would you show? There ain't no trust.
Right.
There is no trust. I just collapsed it. And here with this UCC1 that I recorded over in the recorder's office is going to demonstrate that I've got a perfected security interest in collateral. The trust is collapsed. Do you see the ramifications of what we're doing here, folks?
Right.
You know, we're not just spinning yarns here. We're doing real things. Now, it would be the very best scenario if you can get all of these documents that we had talked about here, if you could get them recorded, and some people have had a heck of a time getting them recorded. All right. Now, if you own property, you can do what's known as a fixture filing, and then you can bring all these documents in. So when I was first doing this process, we had a seminar coming up, and I was actually in a big hurry to get it all done, or I probably would have done it differently. But I was on my way. Oregon wouldn't record any of this. I said, okay. So I was heading to California at that time. I had a friend down there. He said, look, he said, I can get that stuff recorded, because he recorded his this way. He said, I own property in California, so we'd do a fixture filing. So that's how we did it. We did a fixture filing. And here, you know, here's a copy of the fixture filing. Now, UCC stuff is a little bit difficult. And, you know, we spent a lot of time, you know, about UCC that. So if you can't get it done, recorded any other way, use a fixture file. If you don't own property, find somebody who's got some property and go do a fixture file. It ain't that hard.
Okay.
And if you need an example of it, I'll be happy to send you a copy of mine the way my friend did it for me.
Okay.
Now, the other alternative, if you simply can't get the stuff recorded, publish it in the legal section of the newspaper.
No, under notices, legal notices.
Legal notices. And there's a procedure for doing that. We don't have time really to go over that.
Yes.
But you just put a short ad in the paper, notice. John Doe am in possession of the following documents. Then you would list the documents, and then you simply say, anybody wants to look at these, here's how you contact me. Run that for 3 weeks, and after you get that run for 3 weeks, then you can get a certificate of publication from the editor of the newspaper. That's the alternative that you can do. If you can't, by any means, get it recorded somewhere. I don't care where you record it, what county.
Right.
Like I say, we was having a lot of problems down there in Clark County, Nevada, recording stuff. So we just went to the next county over, a little old small county out there. They didn't have, it's kind of just a sparsely populated county in Nevada, and they were happy to record it. They record anything, we bring them.
So basically, if you want to go the newspaper route, I am in possession of these documents. If anyone wants to preview or to view these documents, or inspect,
whatever. Here's my contact information.
Okay.
Not that anybody would.
Right. Well, you never know who might respond to a newspaper ad.
But when you get it done, then the editor gives you a certificate of publication, which is noticed to the whole world. So you have satisfied the requirements for equity. All right. Okay. So the whole world is on notice now that you're the owner of the MSO.
Right.
For this 200 pounds of dirt.
Exactly. You have to claim your live status.
Exactly.
Human being status.
Yeah.
Well, this is really just amazing, Winston. You've explained this in such a very basic and simple, I think, enough terms for people to understand. Definitely, that DVD is something worth getting. So you have more, Winston's on there, giving
we're not done yet.
About it.
We're not done. We got one more thing.
Okay.
That I need to show.
Okie doke.
If I can see it here. Maybe I don't have it. Wait a minute. We're going to send a letter to the commissioner. Okay, to inform him of this, because we're wanting to put the commissioner of the Internal Revenue out of Puerto Rico and Philippines on notice. All right, so here is a typical generic. Okay, this is a typical letter that we would send to the commissioner of the Internal Revenue. He's one of the commissioners. There's one in Philippines. There's one in Puerto Rico. And the guy from Puerto Rico, his office is in Washington, D.C., 1111 Constitution Avenue. You'll notice, because that name, the job changes. At the time I did it, it was John Koskinen. That's why I put "or his assigns."
I see.
So he might not be Koskinen right now. But anyway, all right. So think that through. Anyway, dear Commissioner, please take notice of the enclosed documents. So the enclosed documents are the ones that I had got on that fixture filing and had recorded. So I'm sending him copies that got a file stamp on them, so that he knows they've been recorded. They're a part of the public record.
Right.
I've taken private documents, brought them into the public. They're recorded. They're a part of the public record. They cannot be disputed. All right. So please take notice of the enclosed documents, authentication of the certificate of live birth, and the affidavit of ownership. Please enter this status change into your Internal Revenue master file so that all of the U.S. government agencies can update their files. Winston Shrout has a perfected security interest as per the revised Article 9 requirements. This is an estoppel against any other claim by any other entity. Winston Shrout is a private man, non-resident alien, and American national. Winston is not an enemy of the state as per Title 50 of the United States Code Trading with the Enemy Act, but is at peace with all men. Now, so when you send this letter, along with these copies,
Right.
that would cause the commissioner to change your status on the master file from U.S. citizen, who is an enemy of the state, into something other than that, non-resident alien or any other non-taxable status. And then the government agencies, we've been informed, update their files from the master file at least once a month. All right, so now all of the government entities are on notice. They've changed your status and so forth. Then what we recommend is that you do the same thing in your state or wherever you're at. Send a copy of all these things along with a cover letter, perhaps in affidavit form, to inform, your Secretary of State, your Attorney General. You might send a copy to the Highway Patrol. You might send a copy to the sheriff, blah, 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 so that the people where you're at know that you are holding the MSO on your body.
Right.
If they happen to stop you and you produce that, they're to let you go and to have nothing further to do with you.
Right.
Because if they do, the liabilities can turn horrendous.
Okay. So you could say that either Secretary of State, Highway Patrol, and who else would be another person?
Attorney General.
Oh, Attorney General, right. Okay.
Maybe the Lieutenant General. I mean, just think through your state. Who would be the appropriate people? And if you let's say for instance you're having trouble in your city,
right,
blah blah blah.
Right.
I mean, just who do you think would need to have this information? Well, certainly the Highway Patrol,
sure,
but Attorney General, Secretary of State, so forth. So that would be appropriate.
Okay.
In that situation. Now, let's get into some of the anomalies with the certificate of live birth that people have run into. I personally believe that you can get past those if you press the issue. But people come back and say, well, we can't get this, we can't get that. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And so in situations where they just, come to the end of the road and they don't seem to be able to get a certified copy of the certificate of live birth, you'll just have to go with whatever you got. That's what it amounts to. Now, I know a lot of people in Canada are hearing this. If you're in Canada, what you would do for this authentication, you would go to your province. And once you go into your province, you would send it to the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. for authentication, and then send it to the Secretary of State there in Washington, D.C. Now there have been some other countries. I mean, I'm getting I'm getting questions from all over the planet really about things they're running into. In some instances, you'll just have to work through those problems. I can't go solve it for you. For instance, I'm working with a guy in Austria, people in Switzerland, people from South Africa. And what happens is you just have to work your way through it. I can't come and do it for you. I can give you the principle of how it should work and how it has worked with me. But some of those, I just can't come to all those places and figure it out for you. You're going to Australia, New Zealand, wherever.
Right.
You're going to have to go and figure it out for yourself. And if you do figure it out, please send me that information so that if somebody from wherever asks me that same question, I can tell them. You see?
Okay.
Okay, so you have the principle that we're working with.
Right.
Some of the details you'll have to figure out. I simply can't come and do it for you.
Right.
All right. So those anomalies sometimes come up. Now, so the question gets to be, what good does this do me? Parents can do this process for their minor children. And then just dare somebody to lay a hand on them or stick a needle in them.
Right.
Because if they do, first off, it's criminal. It's really criminal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not statutory criminal. It's called
Because
assault and battery to stick a needle in somebody.
well, because you're on the private side at this point too.
Exactly.
Right.
See? And so, people, like I say, when I was talking to that lady
Mm.
from the Sioux reservation,
Mm.
she told me the U.S. government had stolen 26,000 children off the reservation over the years. And I said, well, look at this. Go do this. Because all those children they took had a what? Social Security number.
Yeah. Mm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And so I said, you can put an end to this.
Mm.
And she went back, and apparently she was working on it. I said, look, you're going to go and start talking all this kind of stuff to people who might not be up to speed, on some of the thought process. I said, if you can do it for them,
Mm.
I said, create a vault someplace.
Mm.
And when you've completed their paperwork, put it in that vault and hold it for them. So it'll
Yeah.
be safe.
Right.
And that just dare some government official to come and take on them children.
Mm.
See, I remember years ago, there's this fellow up there, I think he's a Mohawk, Leonard Peltier.
Mm.
He's still in prison as far as I know, because he got into a shooting match and killed a government agent and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why is he in prison? Because he got a social security number. He don't own his own body. He can't come out. I mean, I corresponded with him, said, there's some things I might be able to help you do. And he said, no, let it go. And so I did. I mean, people have to volunteer. I can't do things for adults. I can do things for minors. I can't do things for adults.
Right.
And so if you're a parent, you have children, and you want to prevent some of the terrible things that are being done to your children, this is how you solve it.
Right.
And so, like I say, I get a little bit worked up about this. I get a little bit worked up because, when we have the solution to a problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then people don't use the solution, that's what gets me worked up.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, for individuals, for parents, invest in this.
Right.
Go to the website, get a copy of the DVD. All these documents, and paperwork, and discussion about it are on that DVD.
Right.
And then put it into effect.
Exactly.
Now, people ask me how much is it going to cost you to do all this?
Mm-hmm.
You can probably get all this done. If you slow play it,
Mm-hmm.
you can probably get it all done for $50, $75 or $100.
Right.
Can you get freedom for $100?
Yes,
you can. Damn it.
Right. Well, people have to make this investment in themselves, and and a lot of people who don't do it correctly, you have to do it correctly. So you have to really go over
it ain't that hard.
but,
if you get confused, send me an email.
Okay.
Ask me. I'll be happy to. But don't send an email and ask me a question until you've at least gone over that DVD 2 or 3 times.
Right.
And then if you run into a problem that I can answer, send me an email. Like I say, I get emails from Australia or Ireland or wherever. People asking me questions about their situation. Some of those questions I can't answer because I just don't know. Some of them I can.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, but let's get behind this. All this business about wanting to be free and all this kind of stuff is just a bunch of bullshit talk.
Yeah. Are you willing to do this to be free?
You don't get freedom from the barrel of a gun.
Yeah. Get tyranny.
You go and undo all these stupid contracts that you've gotten into by your own free will. So don't be blaming anybody,
even
because
ignorance,
you're not free.
Mm-hmm.
It's you.
Okay.
So, like I say, pardon me for getting hard about this.
Yeah.
But sometimes you got to talk pretty straight to get people's attention. So I apologize, for talking kind of hard. But you know. Uh,
You get the point across, Winston, and well, you have to get the point across, and you're doing a great job, and we're all very grateful to you for it too, because
well, people used to laugh at me sometimes when I do seminars. I carry a yardstick, and people would ask questions, and I'd hold that yardstick up and say, "Listen, yeah, I'm going to have to come over and whack you." It was just a joke, you know,
right, but
about
you got
whacking
the
people.
point across.
Yeah, for getting your point across. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of funny. That time, Dr. Lou E. Holly he come by the house one night, you know, dinner, and he was complaining about the same thing. He said, I do these workshops and seminars. He said, and people, you know, just don't think, and you know, it's kind of hard for me, you know, when people are asking questions and not thinking about it. So I went back in the room, brought out my yardstick, gave it to him, said, "Here." Said, "You take." He took it. I think he may have used it a few times. I don't know.
Man.
Can you imagine using a yardstick at a whole pono workshop?
Really, I can't imagine either. But hey, you never know.
But
You know, ignorance runs pretty deep here, so it might be.
If you got to whack somebody, whack them.
Well, Winston, thank you so much. This has been, you know, I think very eye-opening for our viewers who had questions about this process, because we have discussed it in previous reports. Go back to that original issue. We will be getting that up soon. It does take a little bit of time. We did get everything restored so that we can get that done. And just a little bit more time, we'll get that done, you know.
Yeah, they need to go back really for a full. We just briefly went over it today. But if you can get back to the very, at least listen to at least the very first three a country road reports. Start with that very first one, because that's where I talk about original issue, and then I start to build from that. Because you have to start at the very first,
exactly,
which is your birth.
Exactly.
As soon as you popped out of the womb, took the first breath of life. Now we're in business. But all the problems that have come since that time can be solved when you go back to the very first breath of life. You see what I mean?
Very good. We can see that. And this is a solution. And thank you so much, Winston. This is going to be very helpful for people. And again, if you have questions, Winston's website will be in the description section of the video. And there you can find his email where you can email him questions if you have any. So thank you, Winston. This has been a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Helped to clarify a lot of things for me as well.
Great.
And thank you very much for your time and wisdom, because we really need wisdom right now.
Well, us old white-haired guys, you know, we didn't get this white hair just because we got old.
You earned it, Winston.
People keep saying, "Man, if you could change your hair color back the way it was, would you?" I say, "No, man. Look here, I've worked on this for 70 years.
Yeah,
I ain't changing it."
You earned it. You earned it.
I earned it.
You did indeed. So thank you, Winston. It was good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Oh yeah.
Hope you enjoy the weekend. We'll be back next week with another POTUS report on Monday, and of course next week with another country road. So to our viewers, thank you very much for all of you who are doing your part and participating and being part of GoldFish Report. You are part of GoldFish Report. This is for we the peeps. It's all for you. So we will have more reports coming, and we appreciate all the viewers who send us stories to post on our news page, and also all the viewers who do contribute and make donations, because that's the only way that we can keep this going for you. So we appreciate it, and with great gratitude. Thank you so much. And we will see everyone. Have a great weekend. This should get everybody off and excited this weekend to view this country roads and get everybody really motivated to really want your freedom. So thank you so much, Winston. Good to see you. Have a great weekend.
Okay, well, goodbye to everybody. You know, and please have a pleasant thought about me. I didn't mean to get so mean in my talk.
Okay, so we didn't have a stick with them, so it's all good. So we hope you have a great weekend, and this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report. Thanks for viewing.